She humiliated me at a party. He's sweet but not husband material, so I gave her exactly what she said. I wasn't husband material at her own housewarming party, loud enough for everyone to hear. I was carrying her favorite bottle of wine from our collection when those words hit me like a slap across the face. Melissa had been planning this party for weeks, obsessing over every detail of our new downtown Chicago apartment. I'd helped her arrange the furniture, string up the Edison bulb lights, and prep all the appetizers she insisted we needed to impress our mutual friends from the tech industry. Everything had to be perfect for Melissa's big moment, and I genuinely wanted it to be special for her. I was actually proud of what we'd built together: the exposed brick walls, the kitchen island where she loved to entertain, the view of the city lights that made our place feel like something out of a magazine. I thought this party was celebrating our life together, our step forward as a couple after 2 years of dating. I was wrong about what Melissa was actually celebrating. I'd gone to grab that bottle of Pinot Grigio she'd specifically requested, the one we picked up during our weekend trip to Napa last spring. She'd mentioned wanting to share it with everyone tonight, and I was happy to play the attentive boyfriend role. Walking back toward the kitchen island where she was holding court, I could hear her voice rising above the ambient conversation and jazz playlist we'd carefully curated together. That's when I caught the words that would change everything between us. She was talking to a group that included Erica, her colleague from the digital marketing firm where they both worked as analysts. Erica had always struck me as ambitious and calculating, the type who measured every interaction for potential advantage. I'd noticed how she watched Melissa and me at company events, like she was studying our dynamic for weaknesses. Tonight she was getting exactly what she'd been looking for. Melissa was in full performance mode, wine glass in hand, gesturing dramatically as she explained her relationship philosophy to anyone within earshot. I heard her say my name first, which made me slow my approach, thinking she might be telling some sweet story about us. Instead, I got to hear my girlfriend of 2 years categorize me as sweet and dependable, but honestly not husband material. She called me a comfortable placeholder, like I was some kind of temporary furniture she'd settled for until something better came along. The casual cruelty of it knocked the breath out of me. I stood there holding that wine bottle, watching our friends exchange uncomfortable glances while Melissa continued digging my grave deeper. She talked about settling for stability over passion, about how I was nice enough but lacked the ambition and edge she really wanted in a life partner. Every word felt calculated to wound, and I realized this wasn't some offhand comment made in poor judgment. This was how Melissa actually saw me, and she'd chosen our housewarming party as the perfect venue to share her true feelings with everyone we knew. Erica was drinking it all in with obvious satisfaction, nodding along like Melissa was revealing some profound truth about modern relationships. I could see other people looking around awkwardly, trying to figure out if I was within earshot of this character assassination. Some of them caught sight of me standing there, and their expressions shifted to something between pity and secondhand embarrassment. The whole scene felt surreal, like watching someone vandalize my life while pretending it was art. I had 2 choices in that moment: create a scene that would give Melissa exactly the drama she seemed to want, or handle this with the dignity she just claimed I lacked. I chose dignity, walking calmly to the kitchen island and setting down her wine without saying a word. Melissa looked up at me with mild surprise, clearly having forgotten she'd requested that specific bottle. She smiled at me like nothing had happened, like she hadn't just spent the last 5 minutes explaining to our mutual friends why I was inadequate as a potential husband. I smiled back and told her to enjoy her party, then spent the rest of the evening playing the perfect host while internally planning my response to this ultimate betrayal. I watched Melissa bask in the attention, completely unaware that she just handed me the clarity I needed to see our relationship for what it really was. By the time the last guest left our apartment, I'd already decided exactly how I was going to give Melissa everything she'd said she wanted. The morning after the party, I woke up with absolute clarity about what needed to happen next. Melissa was still sleeping off her celebration, completely oblivious to the fact that her public humiliation of me had just signed her eviction notice from the life we built together. I made coffee and started researching Chicago tenant rights on my laptop, something I probably should have done before we moved in together, but I trusted our relationship enough to skip. The irony wasn't lost on me that my name alone was on the lease, a decision we made because my credit score was significantly higher than Melissa's after she maxed out several cards during her college years. What had seemed like a practical arrangement 6 months ago now felt like divine intervention. I called my attorney friend George over lunch, explaining the situation without going into the emotional details. He confirmed what I'd suspected from my research. Since I was the sole leaseholder and Melissa had no legal claim to the apartment, I had complete control over who lived there. She'd been paying me her half of the rent each month, but there was no sublease agreement or any paperwork that gave her tenant rights. George reminded me to document everything and handle the transition professionally, advice that aligned perfectly with my plan to give Melissa exactly what she'd claimed to want. That afternoon, while Melissa was at work probably telling her colleagues more stories about her placeholder boyfriend, I reached out to Erica. I'd gotten her number from Melissa's phone months ago when we were planning a group dinner, and I knew from office gossip that she'd been looking for a new living situation since her recent breakup. I presented the opportunity as a straightforward business arrangement, a furnished room in a prime downtown location at a rate significantly below market value, available immediately. Erica was intrigued, asking pointed questions about the lease terms and what had prompted this sudden availability. I explained that Melissa and I had decided to pursue separate living arrangements to give each other space for personal growth, and that I was looking for a responsible professional to take over her portion of the rent. The beauty of this arrangement wasn't just the practical benefits, though those were substantial. Erica worked directly with Melissa in their digital marketing firm's analytics department, where they'd been engaged in subtle professional competition since Erica started 8 months ago. Melissa had complained endlessly about Erica's ambition and what she called her calculated networking style, never realizing that those same qualities made her exactly the type of person I wanted as an ally in this situation. During our phone conversation, Erica mentioned that she'd been impressed by the apartment when she'd visited for the party, particularly the kitchen setup and downtown location that would cut her commute in half. She also made a few observations about Melissa's party comments that let me know she'd been paying attention to more than just the real estate. Erica was smart enough to see the strategic implications of this arrangement without me having to spell them out explicitly. We scheduled a viewing for the following evening when Melissa would be at her weekly yoga class. I spent the day documenting Melissa's financial contributions to our household, calculating exactly what she owed for utilities and shared expenses through the end of the month. My accountant brain automatically organized everything into spreadsheets, creating a clear paper trail of our separation that would protect me from any future drama. The apartment had never looked better than it did when Erica arrived for the viewing. I'd cleaned everything thoroughly and arranged the space to showcase its best features, the same way Melissa had for the party, but with different intentions. Erica walked through each room methodically, asking practical questions about storage, internet speed, and building amenities. She understood immediately that this was a business transaction that happened to come with entertaining side benefits. When she asked about the timeline for move-in, I explained that Melissa would be transitioning out within the next 2 weeks, and that I was looking for someone who could commit to at least a 6-month arrangement. Erica accepted on the spot, offering to pay the security deposit and first month's rent immediately. We shook hands on the deal, and I felt the first real satisfaction I'd experienced since overhearing Melissa's party declaration. I was about to give Melissa exactly what she'd said she wanted: freedom from our comfortable but apparently passionless relationship. The fact that her professional rival would be taking her place in our beautiful downtown apartment was just a bonus that made the whole arrangement more interesting. Melissa still had no idea what was coming, but she was about to learn that publicly humiliating someone has consequences she'd never considered. The conversation happened 3 days later, over coffee in our kitchen on a Saturday morning that felt like any other weekend in our relationship. Melissa was scrolling through her phone, probably checking the engagement metrics on her party photos, when I sat down across from her with the calm demeanor I'd been practicing since Erica signed our roommate agreement. I told Melissa that I'd been doing some serious thinking about her party comments, and that I'd realized she was absolutely right about our relationship dynamic. I explained that I wanted to give her exactly what she'd said she needed: freedom from settling for someone who wasn't husband material, space to find the passion and ambition she clearly craved in a partner. Melissa looked up from her phone with surprise, clearly not expecting this mature and supportive response to what she probably assumed I hadn't even heard. I continued explaining how I decided to move out of our romantic arrangement to give her room for personal growth, mentioning casually that I already found someone to take over her portion of the rent since she need independence to pursue her real goals. The way Melissa's face shifted from surprise to confusion to something approaching alarm was absolutely fascinating to watch. She asked who would be taking over her room, and I told her it was Erica from her office, Someone professional and responsible who'd be able to commit to the lease terms immediately. I presented this as a practical solution that would give Melissa the freedom she described wanting while ensuring I could maintain the apartment I worked hard to afford. Melissa initially tried to frame this as validation of her party comments, talking about how glad she was that I was finally listening to her needs and supporting her journey toward finding someone more compatible. She even posted something on social media about choosing herself and refusing to settle for comfortable mediocrity, completely missing the strategic implications of what I just orchestrated. For about 24 hours, Melissa seemed genuinely excited about this development, treating it like she'd successfully trained me to understand my own inadequacy as a partner. She started making plans to stay with friends while she looked for a new place, talking enthusiastically about the freedom to explore her options without being tied down to our safe but uninspiring relationship. She seemed to think she'd won some kind of victory by getting me to acknowledge that I wasn't good enough for her long-term happiness. The reality started sinking in when she realized the practical implications of moving out on short notice. Melissa had been living beyond her means since college, and despite her decent salary at the marketing firm, she never built up the savings necessary for security deposits and first month's rent on a place comparable to what we shared. She started researching apartments in her price range and discovered that anything decent in the city was either way, above her budget or required roommates she didn't know. Meanwhile, Erica would be moving into the beautiful downtown space Melissa had helped design and decorate, paying below-market rent for the privilege. When Melissa asked if there might be room for negotiation on the timeline, I reminded her gently that she made it clear our arrangement was holding her back from finding what she really wanted. I told her I was just trying to be supportive of her growth by not making her feel obligated to stay in a situation she described as settling. The conversation got more tense when Melissa started to grasp that Erica specifically would be living with me in the apartment. Melissa considered hers sleeping in room where she'd planned her elaborate party, enjoying the downtown lifestyle they'd built together. She asked several pointed questions about why I'd chosen Erica over other potential roommates, and I explained honestly that Erica was a professional colleague who been looking for exactly this type of arrangement, making her the most logical choice for a smooth transition. I could see Melissa starting to connect the dots between her party comments and this strategic outcome, but she was trapped by her own narrative about wanting independence and refusing to settle. She couldn't exactly argue against getting what she publicly declared she needed without admitting that her humiliation of me had been performative cruelty rather than genuine relationship assessment. The beauty of my approach was that I taken her at her word and given her exactly what she asked for, leaving her no room to complain without looking hypocritical or desperate. Melissa moved out the following weekend, and Erica moved in 2 days later, creating a seamless transition that felt almost anticlimactic after all the emotional buildup. I helped Melissa pack her belongings with the same care I'd shown throughout our relationship, maintaining perfect gentleman behavior while she struggled to process that I was letting her go without a fight for reconciliation. The professional consequences started showing up within 2 weeks of Melissa's move to her cramped studio apartment across town. I knew this because Erica would share amusing updates about their workplace dynamics over dinner in the kitchen Melissa used to consider her domain. Melissa's work performance had taken a noticeable hit as she split her attention between adjusting to her new living situation and obsessing over Erica's growing presence in what used to be her life. Erica described how Melissa would zone out during client presentations, constantly checking her phone for social media updates that might reveal details about our new roommate arrangement. The distraction was obvious enough that their supervisor had started assigning more critical projects to Erica, who demonstrated the focus and reliability that Melissa was suddenly lacking. Meanwhile, Erica was thriving in ways that made the contrast even more stark. She'd quickly settled into the apartment routine, contributing thoughtfully to household management and suggesting improvements that actually enhanced our living space. Erica had a talent for cooking that Melissa had never developed, turning our kitchen into a place where we actually wanted to spend time rather than just a backdrop for Instagram photos. She organized wine tastings with interesting bottles she'd research and purchase, hosted small dinner parties for colleagues who were impressed by our downtown setup, and generally treated our shared space like a home rather than a stage set for lifestyle content. The professional dynamic at their digital marketing firm became increasingly tense as Melissa watched Erica leverage our growing friendship into career advantages. Erica would mention industry insights I'd shared from my own tech background, use connections I'd introduced her to at networking events, and generally benefit from the collaborative partnership that Melissa had taken for granted during our relationship. Their supervisors started noting Erica's improved performance and initiative, while Melissa's contributions became more scattered and reactive. I learned about these workplace developments through Erica's just casual observations rather than any deliberate attempt to undermine Melissa professionally. Erica was simply a more strategic thinker who understood how to build relationships that benefited everyone involved, while Melissa had always approached her career with the same entitled attitude she'd brought to our relationship. The competitive dynamic intensified when Melissa realized that Erica wasn't just living in her former apartment, but actually improving upon the lifestyle Melissa thought she'd been forced to abandon. Erica would post photos of our dinner experiments and cultural activities on social media, always carefully framed to show the apartment features Melissa had helped choose but never really appreciated. Melissa started commenting on these posts, with increasingly obvious attempts to remind people that she'd been there first, mentioning how she picked out specific furniture pieces or discovered certain restaurants in the neighborhood. The desperation in these comments was painful to watch, but Erica handled them with gracious professionalism that made Melissa's territorial behavior look petty by comparison. At company events, the contrast became even more obvious. Erica would attend with the confidence of someone who was genuinely happy with her living situation and personal relationships, while Melissa carried herself with the brittle energy of someone trying to convince herself that her choices had been correct. Erica had this natural way of including me in conversations when we happened to encounter their work colleagues, treating me as a valued friend and roommate rather than a trophy or accessory. Melissa would watch these interactions from across the room, clearly struggling with the reality that Erica was not only living her old life but demonstrating how much better it could be with the right approach. The most telling moment came during a holiday party at their firm, where I was invited as Erica's guest. Melissa spent the entire evening trying to get my attention while Erica focused on building professional relationships and enjoying herself authentically. I could see Melissa calculating the social dynamics, realizing that everyone who witnessed her housewarming party comments was now seeing the outcome of those choices playing out in real time. Her colleagues were watching Erica thrive in the situation Melissa had abandoned, while Melissa herself struggled with obvious regret and resentment that she could unexpress without admitting she made a terrible mistake. Erica mentioned later that Melissa had started making subtle attempts to undermine her at work, suggesting that Erica's improved performance was somehow connected to unfair advantages rather than genuine professional growth. But their supervisor was too experienced to be manipulated by office politics, and Erica's results spoke for themselves in ways that made Melissa's attempts at sabotage look unprofessional and desperate. I realized that giving Melissa exactly what she asked for had created a domino effect that extended far beyond our personal relationship into every aspect of her life. 6 months after Erica moved in, something unexpected started developing between us that had nothing to do with my strategic response to Melissa's humiliation and everything to do with genuine compatibility I hadn't anticipated. What began as a practical roommate arrangement had evolved into the kind of partnership I thought I had with Melissa, but with someone who actually appreciated what I brought to the relationship. Erica and I discovered that we shared similar approaches to problem solving, both in our professional work and in daily life management. She had this way of engaging with my ideas that made me remember why I enjoyed intellectual challenges before. Melissa had made me feel like my analytical thinking was boring rather than valuable. Erica would ask thoughtful questions about my tech projects, offer insights from her marketing background that actually improved my work, and generally treat our conversations like collaborative exchanges rather than obligatory relationship maintenance. The transition from roommates to something more happened so naturally that we were both surprised when we realized we started looking forward to each other's company in ways that went beyond shared household responsibilities. Erica had a dry sense of humor that complemented my own, and she never made me feel like I needed to apologize for being methodical or planning-oriented. Instead, she seemed to find those qualities reassuring and attractive, telling me that she never lived with someone who made her feel so secure and supported in daily life. We started cooking together more intentionally, exploring restaurants in our neighborhood as an actual team rather than me, trying to impress someone who was always mentally comparing our experiences to some imaginary standard. Erica appreciated the effort I put into researching new places and planning interesting evenings, Treating my attention to detail as thoughtfulness rather than the desperate overcompensation Melissa had always implied it was. The physical attraction developed alongside our emotional connection, but it felt completely different from the performance-based dynamic I'd had with Melissa. Erica never made me feel like I was auditioning for her approval or competing with some fantasy version of what she thought she deserved. Instead, she seemed genuinely excited about building something real with someone who shared her values around loyalty, honesty, and mutual respect. When Melissa found out about our relationship transition, the reaction was everything I'd hoped it would be and more. She'd been monitoring our social media activity obsessively, and the shift from platonic roommate posts to obviously romantic content sent her into a spiral of regret and desperate damage control attempts. Melissa started showing up at places where she knew we might be, always with some transparent excuse about coincidentally being in the neighborhood or needing to discuss apartment logistics that had been resolved months earlier. She'd inserted herself into conversations with mutual friends, fishing for information about our relationship status and trying to plant seeds of doubt about Erica's motives. The most pathetic incident happened when Melissa appeared at our apartment door on a Saturday morning with croissants and coffee, claiming she'd been in the area and thought we might want breakfast. Erica handled the situation with perfect grace, inviting Melissa in and treating her like any other casual acquaintance, while making it clear through body language and casual touches that she and I were very much together. Melissa spent 20 minutes trying to find some angle for conversation that might create tension or reveal cracks in our relationship, but Erica refused to engage with the obvious manipulation attempts. Instead, she asked Melissa polite questions about her new apartment and work projects, maintaining friendly professionalism, while I watched Melissa realize that her worst-case scenario was unfolding exactly as she feared. The woman she'd always considered inferior wasn't just living her old life, but had actually upgraded it in ways Melissa was forced to acknowledge. Erica had transformed our apartment into a more welcoming and functional space, had built stronger professional relationships at their shared workplace, and was clearly in a healthier and more balanced romantic partnership than Melissa had ever experienced with me. The irony was devastating for Melissa to witness, but she was trapped by her own narrative about needing someone more ambitious and passionate than her placeholder boyfriend. She couldn't exactly argue that I was husband material now without admitting that her party declaration had been cruel nonsense designed to make herself feel superior. During that uncomfortable apartment visit, I watched Melissa study the life she'd abandoned and realized that every improvement Erica had made was possible because Erica approached relationships as collaborative partnerships rather than competitive additions. Melissa had spent 2 years trying to change me into someone different, while Erica appreciated exactly who I was and worked with my strengths rather than against them. The contrast was impossible for Melissa to ignore, and I could see her struggling with the recognition that she'd thrown away something valuable for reasons that now seemed completely superficial and self-defeating. 18 months after Melissa's party declaration, I'd proposed to Erica during their company's annual retreat at a resort outside Chicago, creating the maximum possible professional and personal impact for Melissa, who was forced to witness the culmination of her own strategic miscalculation. I'd planned the proposal carefully, choosing a moment during the cocktail reception when most of their colleagues would be present to witness Erica's genuine surprise and joy. The engagement ring was everything Melissa would have expected from someone she'd claimed wasn't husband material. A classic solitaire with excellent clarity and cut, purchased after months of research into Erica's preferences and style. When Erica said yes with tears of happiness, the applause from their co-workers filled the conference room while Melissa stood frozen at the bar, watching her replacement become everything she'd convinced herself I could never provide. The timing wasn't accidental, though it wasn't purely vindictive either. Erica and I had been discussing marriage seriously for months, and the company retreat simply offered the perfect opportunity to celebrate our engagement with the professional community that had witnessed both my relationship with Melissa and the transition to my partnership with Erica. Many of their colleagues remembered Melissa's housewarming party comments and could appreciate the poetic justice of seeing me commit to someone who valued what Melissa had publicly dismissed. The engagement announcement spread through their industry network within hours, amplified by social media posts from colleagues who'd attended the retreat and witnessed the proposal firsthand. Erica's genuine happiness was obvious in every photo, and the supportive comments from their professional contacts created a narrative about finding real love with someone who appreciates your worth. Meanwhile, Melissa's isolation at the retreat became painfully apparent as she watched former mutual friends celebrate an engagement that represented everything she claimed she wanted but had been too blind to recognize when she had it. Erica's career trajectory accelerated dramatically after our engagement, not because of any special favoritism, but because she was able to leverage our stable partnership into the kind of professional confidence and risk-taking that leads to advancement. She started proposing more ambitious client strategies, volunteering for leadership roles in major campaigns, and generally demonstrating the kind of initiative that gets noticed by senior management. Our relationship gave her the emotional foundation to take professional chances, while Melissa's ongoing personal drama continued to drain energy from her work performance. The contrast became especially stark during client presentations, where Erica's composed confidence stood out against Melissa's distracted and sometimes defensive demeanor. Erica had grown into the kind of marketing professional who could handle high-pressure situations with grace, while Melissa seemed increasingly reactive and unpredictable under stress. Their supervisors started assigning the most important client relationships to Erica, recognizing that she'd become someone who could be trusted with the firm's most valuable accounts. Melissa's professional reputation suffered not just from her declining performance, but from her obvious resentment and unprofessional behavior around our engagement. She made subtle comments about office relationships and questioned whether Erica's promotions were based purely on merit, creating tension that reflected poorly on her judgment and character. Their colleagues could see that Melissa's bitterness was affecting her ability to work collaboratively, while Erica maintained professional relationships with everyone regardless of personal history. The engagement party we hosted at our downtown apartment became another showcase of how thoroughly Erica had transformed the life Melissa had abandoned. The same space where Melissa had humiliated me now hosted a celebration of our commitment, filled with friends and colleagues who could witness firsthand how much happier and more successful we both were together. Erica had decorated the apartment with elegant simplicity, focusing on creating warm hospitality rather than impressive display, and the evening felt like an authentic celebration rather than a performance designed to generate social media content. Melissa wasn't invited, of course, but she found ways to insert herself into the aftermath through mutual connections who shared photos and stories from the party. I heard through the professional grapevine that Melissa had spent the evening of our engagement party alone in her studio apartment, scrolling through social media posts from an event happening in the space she'd once called home. The psychological impact of seeing Erica surrounded by support and celebration while occupying Melissa's former life had to be devastating. For someone who built her self-worth around the idea that she was settling for less than she deserved. The most satisfying aspect of the whole situation was how completely organic it felt, despite my initial strategic intentions. Erica and I weren't together despite Melissa. We were together because we discovered genuine compatibility and shared values that made us want to build a life together. And Melissa's humiliation of me had simply cleared the path for us to find each other. 2 years after Melissa's devastating party declaration, she attended our wedding as a professional obligation, watching her replacement become everything she'd claimed I wasn't worthy of finding. The ceremony took place at a historic venue downtown that Erica had chosen for its architectural details and intimate atmosphere, exactly the kind of thoughtful location selection that Melissa had always demanded, but never appreciated when I made similar efforts during our relationship. Melissa sat alone at a corner table in the reception hall, surrounded by colleagues who moved on from our ancient history, while she remained trapped by her inability to process the consequences of her own cruelty. I could see her watching Erica interact with guests with genuine warmth and confidence, realizing that everything she criticized about my approach to relationships had actually been valuable qualities that the right person would treasure. During the reception toasts, multiple speakers referenced our origin story as former roommates who found unexpected love through mutual respect and shared values, a narrative that highlighted the organic development of our relationship while implicitly contrasting it with relationships based on superficial attraction or social positioning. Erica's maid of honor talked about how happy she'd been to watch Erica find someone who appreciated her intelligence and ambition while supporting her goals rather than competing with them. My best man mentioned how much more relaxed and confident I'd become since finding someone who valued my thoughtfulness and planning abilities rather than making me feel apologetic for being organized and reliable. Each speech reinforced the theme that Erica and I had built something based on genuine compatibility and mutual appreciation. While everyone present could remember Melissa's public declaration that I lacked the qualities necessary for marriage. The wedding photographer captured candid moments throughout the evening that told the story of our celebration. Erica laughing with my parents who'd immediately embraced her as family. Me dancing with her grandmother who'd flown in from Portland specifically for our wedding. Both of us surrounded by friends and colleagues who were genuinely happy to celebrate our commitment. These weren't posed Instagram moments designed to project an image of success, but authentic expressions of joy from people who could see that we found something rare and valuable together. Melissa's isolation served as a perfect representation of the natural consequences that follow when someone treats public humiliation as entertainment and genuine partnership as settling for less than they deserve. The contrast between her solitary presence and our community of support illustrated exactly what she lost when she chosen cruelty over kindness at her own housewarming party. As Erica and I danced to our first song, a jazz standard that reflected our shared appreciation for classic elegance over trendy flash, I could see Melissa finally understanding that I had indeed been husband material all along, just not for someone who couldn't recognize worth until it was too late. The wedding represented the culmination of everything Melissa had inadvertently set in motion with her casual cruelty 2 years earlier. Her attempt to publicly diminish my value as a partner had instead created the exact circumstances that allowed me to find someone who appreciated those same qualities she mocked. Erica had built a successful career partly through the confidence that came from our stable partnership, while Melissa continued to struggle professionally and personally with the aftermath of her own poor judgment. The morning after the wedding, Erica and I left for our honeymoon in Italy, a trip we planned together with the same collaborative approach we brought to everything else in our relationship. We'd researched destinations that offered both cultural experiences and relaxation opportunities, creating an itinerary that reflected our shared interests, rather than trying to recreate something we'd seen on social media. Melissa, meanwhile, returned to her studio apartment and her increasingly isolated existence, probably spending the weekend analyzing our wedding photos on social media and calculating the cost of everything she'd lost through her own strategic miscalculation. The final irony was that Melissa had been absolutely correct about one thing during her housewarming party declaration. I wasn't marriage material for her because she was fundamentally incapable of appreciating the qualities that actually make marriages work. She needed someone who would compete with her rather than collaborate, who would prioritize image over substance, who would treat relationships as performance rather than partnership. I was exactly the wrong person for someone with those requirements, which made her public humiliation of me the best thing that could have happened to both of us. She got the freedom to pursue whatever she thought she actually wanted, while I got the opportunity to find someone who wanted exactly what I had to offer. And our wedding day was the perfect celebration of how sometimes getting exactly what you ask for turns out to be exactly what you deserve.